go first. Yes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Eleanor Holmes Norton, member of the United States House of Representatives from the District of Columbia.
What a pleasure to unveil that statue. And such a pleasure to be with my very good friend, Speaker Pelosi, my other good friend here in the House, Whip Clyburn, our mayor, Mayor Bowser, and of course the chair of our City Council, Chairman Phil Mendelson. I'd like to express my gratitude to Speaker Pelosi and House Committee on Administration Chair Zoe Lofgren for making today possible. The District of Columbia owes a debt of gratitude to Speaker Pelosi, Leader Hoyer, who I'm sorry can't be with us today, and Whip Clyburn for their leadership in passing the D.C. statehood bill in 2020 and 2021. Those were the first and second times in history either chamber of Congress had ever passed the statehood bill. Today's unveiling was 20 years in the making. In 2002, I first introduced a bill to give D.C. 2 statues in the Capitol, as states are entitled to have. D.C. commissioned statues of Frederick Douglass and Pierre L'Enfant in the hopes that they would one day join state statutes in the Capitol. However, Republicans fought my bill, calling it tantamount to granting D.C. statehood. I wish it were. It took us 11 years to get D.C.'s first statue in the Capitol of Frederick Douglass, which is displayed in Emancipation Hall. That is certainly the appropriate place for it. Today, 9 years later, D.C. takes its rightful place among the states in the Capitol with the unveiling of the Pierre L'Enfant statue. Pierre L'Enfant fought in the Revolutionary War, which was launched to end taxation without representation and to give consent of the governed. Yet nearly 700,000 D.C. residents are taxed without voting representation in Congress, and Congress has complete authority over D.C.'s local affairs. Statehood is the remedy to this denial of democracy. D.C. has a larger population than 2 states. D.C. pays more federal taxes per capita, than any state, and more in federal taxes than 21 states. D.C. residents have served in every American war since the Revolutionary War, served in that war. 30,000 current D.C. residents are veterans. In 2020, the House passed the D.C. statehood bill. Last year, the House passed the bill again, and the Senate held its second ever hearing on the bill. The bill has a record 45 Senate co-sponsors. Today, 54%, please remember that number, the great majority, or the majority, 54% of the American people support statehood for the residents of our nation's capital. The unveiling of this statute is a milestone in our ongoing march to make the District of Columbia the 51st state. DC residents, I believe you will agree, have more than earned it. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Muriel Bowser, Mayor of the District of Columbia.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Whip Clyburn, our champion, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, Mr. Chairman, and guest. I am delighted to speak for 700,000 Washingtonians who proudly transferred in 2013 the statue of Frederick Douglass to Emancipation Hall. And today we are similarly proud to gift this statue of Pierre L'Enfant, and in doing so, tell a more complete story of Washington, D.C. In this statue of Pierre L'Enfant, we tell the story of our very first days, a transformation from rural port towns to a thriving metropolis, a transformation that began as one man's vision for a capital city that would represent the founding principle that all men are created equal. In the statue of Frederick Douglass, we tell the other part of the story of a nation that was struggling to live up to those founding ideals, both in terms of equality for Black Americans and representation for the residents of the capital city. And simply having both of these statues now here in the Capitol, we're writing the latest chapter. We're telling the story of the disenfranchisement of Americans who are closer to statehood than ever before, but still enduring near daily attacks on our autonomy and self-determination. I want to, of course, thank Speaker Pelosi and Congresswoman Norton for making this happen, for making sure that the symbol of D.C. having its two statues, just like every state, is not where we stop. We know that achieving this milestone is so important, but we also know our goal is 2 senators. The goal is that D.C. doesn't have to rely on the Senate to confirm local judges. The mayor doesn't have to ask for the D.C. National Guard. The goal is that D.C. residents who elect their local leaders to represent their values don't have those values or laws questioned by lawmakers who live thousands of miles away. I think today about all that's going on in the world, I'm sure we all are, about how 700 Washingtonians living in D.C. are too affected by national and international events, yet locked out of the decisions made here in the Congress. I think about how President Biden is prepared to nominate, or has nominated, a Black woman to serve on the Supreme Court for the first time ever, and D.C. residents won't have a say in that nomination process. And with all that set to become before this Congress and the Supreme Court in the coming months and years, decisions that will affect our nation and our people, I think about the urgency that's before us to right the historic wrong by making Washington, D.C. the 51st state. We will keep pushing, inspired by those who have shaped our history, inspired by our beautiful city. We know when people come to visit our nation's capital in my hometown and the hometown of my congresswoman, they are taken away by the beauty of Washington, D.C. And every day, we are inspired to do work not only for our city, but to make our democracy more perfect. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council of the District of Columbia.
Thank you and good morning, Speaker Pelosi, Congresswoman Norton, Congressman Clyburn, Mayor Bowser, guests. I find it shocking that the architect of the grand plan, that is the District of Columbia, is not already honored in the Capitol building. Major Pierre L'Enfant had a vision that the new nation formed out of a revolution, a great experiment in democracy, should have a capital city that would grow to be the equal of the great capital cities of Europe. Interestingly, one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, then Secretary of State, disagreed. Jefferson, who disapproved of urban life, envisioned an enlarged Williamsburg, befitting an agrarian nation. Whatever. L'Enfant worked closely with President George Washington and designed a city with grand avenues and vistas, with the President's house and the Capitol building occupying prominent spots, with a monumental avenue in between, and a grand esplanade, which we now know of as the Mall. A century later, Daniel Burnham said, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood and probably will not themselves be realized. Make big plans, aim high and hope and work, remembering that a noble, logical diagram, once recorded, will never die, but long after we are gone will be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-growing insistency." This is our city, the home of our nation's capital, as well as home to 700,000 United States citizens. Urban design affects the human spirit, and for the residents of the district, Pierre L'Enfant's vision uplifts our spirit. It is also shocking that despite the evolution of our democracy from the 18th century, when only white, property-owning men could vote, to today, when every white, every black, and everyone, men and women, can vote, that despite that evolution, the 700,000 residents of the District of Columbia still have no vote. A careful read of the Federalist Papers reveals that this disenfranchisement was never a focus of the Founding Fathers. Rather, it was an unintended consequence. And while our democracy has evolved to expand the franchise, that evolution has yet to reach the United States citizens of the District of Columbia. Our neighbors to the south, Mexico, modeled its government after ours following its revolution, and in the past decade, Mexico gave its federal district full enfranchisement as a state, with full rights and responsibilities in the national legislature. That's all we ask. Today's ceremony honors an important figure in our city. It also is a step in recognizing that the district should be equal to the 50 states. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Master Gunnery Sergeant Kevin Benier, the President's own United States Marine Band.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber ways of grain, for purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good sea to shining sea.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable James E. Clyburn, Majority Whip of the United States House of Representatives.
Raising the roof. I looked up to see if the dome was still there. Thank you very much, Sergeant. Madam Speaker, Madam Delegate, Madam Mayor, Mr. Milnerson, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this program here today. As many of you know from your studies, Pierre, or Peter as he preferred to be called, L'Enfant came here as a 23-year-old after serving with his father, an accomplished architect in France. He came here to help fight the Revolutionary War. In that war, he was injured in Savannah, held prisoner in Charleston, served out his probation, and returned to the battle. And when the war was over, he went back to France, but returned to the United States, this time to help design and build our federal bureaucracy and buildings, stopping first in New York. And there he caught the attention of George Washington, who hired him to come and help lay out the site for this great capital. Now, as many of you know, I grew up in the parsonage, and I tend to get a lot of my inspiration from biblical phrases. And I think it's in Proverbs 29:18, we learn that where there is no vision, the people perish. Now, I tend to play off of that a little bit and say, where there is vision, people flourish and thrive. And Pierre L'Enfant was a visionary. So much so until his vision, when it was challenged by the city fathers who did not have as much vision as he had, did not know of his conversations with George Washington and that he was laying out a grand design. Thomas Jefferson wanted him to limit it, cut it back, follow the little cities of Europe. And they asked George Washington to dismiss him, which he did with regret. So when Pierre L'Enfant left with all of his plans, this being Black History Month, the last day of Black History Month, I thought I might add that Benjamin Banneker, a native of Baltimore, had memorized all of what L'Enfant had done. And he stepped forward, and the Endicott family made the investment. And we now have this great city and its layout of monuments and buildings. It is another example of what happens when we get outside of our comfort zones, when we can bring in people who may look different from us and may have been raised different from us, but who are visionaries and have contributions to make. This city was laid out when people like Benjamin Banneker, the Endicott family, and George Washington got outside of the comfort zones and came together to make what we all enjoy today. Congratulations, Ms. Holmes Norton, for your vision in bringing us to this day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Thank you again. We always learn a history lesson and an inspiration from Mr. Clyburn. Madam Mayor, it's an honor to have you here, Mr. Chairman, Madam Congresswoman, and let's just recognize the sculptor, Gordon Cray. Congratulations. It's so beautiful. In her remarks, Congresswoman Norton mentioned that Pierre L'Enfant was fighting against taxation without representation, and here we are, still with that. Madam Mayor talked about when he drew his designs, it was transformative for the city, and here we are, Pierre L'Enfant making this spot in the Capitol transformed, a place where children can come and quietly understand the beauty of art and what it meant in terms of focusing on the greatness of the city, what it was and what it would become. Eleanor chose this spot. Eleanor chose this spot, and really before Pierre L'Enfant was here, nobody really knew that much about this spot except they walked by it all the time. Well, Traverse, thank you for your vision. Thank you for your vision. So here we are, as this was mentioned, he served in George Washington's army. He did that as a very young person, bravely joining the War for American Independence, which was something the French did. Lafayette is in the chamber, and now Pierre L'Enfant is in the hallway of the Capitol. And he created a magnificent city. His leadership alongside of the legacy, as has been mentioned, of Frederick Douglass is perfect. One at the start of our country, another to hold our country together. People in Washington, D.C. fight our wars, pay their taxes, contribute to the greatness of our country, and should have the full representation that has been mentioned. Maybe today will be sort of a pivot for us to get focused more. In the Senate, Senator Carper has led the way, and I want to acknowledge him. And in the House, Leader Hoyer has been a champion for this, and I want to acknowledge both of them. But the idea, as I said earlier, my father was a big supporter of home rule when he was in the Congress and chaired the Appropriations Subcommittee on the District of Columbia, so I feel it's in my DNA. But it is something that generations of Washingtonians have fought for, actual Washingtonians, not representatives from other places. It's long overdue. We just have to continue to persist so that you do get those 2 senators and that we do have a full vote in every aspect of congressional life in the House of Representatives. So for us, this can be a pivotal day. It certainly is a beautiful day. Pierre L'Enfant would be pleased, I think, with his artistic eye to see the great work that you've done, Gordon. And of course, Madam Congresswoman, the place that you put him, and that the mayor of the city, something that was not even in existence at the time, that the mayor of the city and the representative of the council are here to make this possible, and that Mr. Clyburn would memorialize it all with a history lesson. Somebody from Baltimore, again, my father from Baltimore. Remember that when you know football, baseball, all that, the friendship between our 2 cities. In any event, congratulations to everyone on all of this. And now we're going to have another photograph of any of us who wants to come up, just to associate ourselves with this important day in a way that is so beautiful that I do believe Pierre L'Enfant would approve. Madam Mayor, Madam Congresswoman, Mr. Whip. Mr. Councilman. Go again.
And he holds calipers with which he's demarking the map. Now, he's on Capitol Hill. He's got his finger right on the Capitol Hill. And I like to think that perhaps he's there with John Humble, who is his companion, sometimes explaining it to him. He looks over at Georgetown as he faces west and points over to the Navy Yard location on the east branch, which we now call the Anacostia.
I guess he was looking right at him the whole time.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. Thank you.